All right, hello everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Artist Talk on Art for the program we have today, Monday, October 3rd. As you know, the program is being recorded with all rights reserved by A2A. It will be later available on our YouTube channel. Tonight we have a panel moderated by Lawrence Wheatman titled Three Artists Studio Visit. And we have three panelists with us tonight that Lawrence will be introducing here in a moment, including O'Neill Scott, Rick Silberberg, and Iliyan Ivanov. So thank you all for being here tonight. Before we begin, just some notes. Next Monday is a holiday, so we won't be having a program next Monday. The following program will take place on October 17th, and that will be a panel on encaustic artist. So I'll start with Lawrence. I'll just introduce Lawrence for you all. Lawrence Wheatman is an artist and photographer from Washington Heights. He's been a longtime member of the A2A programming committee, and in his artworks, he utilizes broad aspects of camera and film in the dark room. He's worked as a videographer, director, and producer, amongst other creative roles, and has experimented with several art practices, including digital art, performance, and interactive sculpture, to name a few. He began exhibiting his photographic works in 1984. And he has also been a professor of photography at NYU since 1989. So I'll hand it over to Lawrence. Thank you, Lawrence, for organizing everything.
Thank you for helping. And thank you, Doug. I'm really excited about tonight because these artists are people who are doing astonishing work and making a lot of it, and something about the quantity of not just the quantity, but the devotion to making work that I think I think there was a Don Shula. I'm not into sports, so I don't know, but he had a great quote. He said, "The start is what stops most people," and I think that it's pretty obvious that you're an artist and you make artwork, no matter how good or bad it is, the likelihood of your succeeding in any financial way is quite limited. And the fact that we have these folks who are succeeding for decades doing artwork, it's just a big deal to me. And Iliyan is going to be coming up first. Iliyan I first met, I guess, about 4 or 5, 6 years ago, and I was giving a talk at a gallery here. I can't remember its name right now. That I was having a show that I was a juror in, and I was asked to speak to the crowd, and I was talking about how art affects the brain. What we're doing when we produce art is we are essentially improving everybody's perception of the world and everybody's capability to work their brain, and that that's just from looking at the art, and it's more pronounced when we're making the art. And he came up to me at the end of the talk, and he said, I'm a neuroscientist. And I went, oh, I guess, I thought, and he said, I was very, very embarrassed. Oh gosh, there's a neuroscientist in the room and I'm talking about the brain. And he said, I got the feeling you didn't really think that you knew what you were talking about, but you nailed it. And so, of course, he was instantly my best friend. And then I found out he was also a musician. And so we became jam buddies too, until the virus stopped us from doing that. And I am just so blown away with his work. So let's get to it. Let's see. So I got to do share screen. Voila. Whoops. Wrong place. Back to Beginning of the show. Here we are, Open Studios, Neil Scott, Iliyan Ivanov, and Rick Silberberg, who's what we're having tonight. And I picked these artists because of their active and ongoing dedication to their art, their commitment, their focus, and their backstories are sure to inspire. I'm reminded about that art is not about art, is about life. And Iliyan is a native of Bulgaria. He got a fine arts training from George Yankovic, who's I looked him up. He's a big deal. And he had his first one-man show short time after he arrived in the United States in the Midwest, and then did this series that you can actually see in the revolving doors. There's going to be links that'll be posting in a few minutes, so that you can get to all these things that we talk about. His reflecting on the immigration experience and impressions of the new world, he utilizes figurative and abstract imagery via an amalgam of painting, drawing, and collage, developing his ideas in thematically related series meant to challenge the observer's own creativity. And he lives in Manhattan with his family. And he has his resume is actually really, really impressive, but his wife's resume is even more impressive today. Maybe I have it wrong. This I really loved. I rewrote. I took out. It was still too long, but I took out a bunch of stuff. But I love this line. I remember vividly playing. This is Iliyan's words. I remember vividly playing the drawing game with my grandfather. We would start with 10 sheets of paper, and whoever completed his share of animal pictures without repeating a drawing was the winner. Nothing could compare to the joy of such a win. Throughout my school years, I frequently drew illustrations as a complement to my literature assignments. It was like retelling the stories with images. I view my art as a personal landscape where mundane objects are subject to new interpretations and previously unseen associations unfold. For instance, the illusion of movement versus the static nature of the painted image. My inspirations often stem from scientific and philosophical concepts, focusing on the artistic interpretation of theories, illuminating the here and now. A second inspiration is a stage musician, translating the intensity and dynamic of performance into the frozen images of pictures. Has been a lifelong goal. Artist must train not only his eye, but also his soul. And we're going to start. This was a suggestion of Iliyan's that we sort of split this in half. And I think we're going to find out in short order why that is. I don't know. I intentionally left that off so that I could find out together with you. And so here we go. Just looking good for everyone? Let's see. Can I make it so that, oh, this is, yeah. All right. So I think I'm going to fill in this. And Iliyan, please, jump in anytime you.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was very, very generous. And the accurate part about the presentation was, yes, when we met for the first time, I really did have a feeling instantly that we're going to be good friends for a very long time. So I certainly agree with that depiction of our initial meeting. And in terms of when we spoke about it, why I may suggest that you include this very early work. So what you guys are seeing is work that I've done before I came to the United States in 1994. So this is very late 80s and early 90s. And that's to some extent related to the training. Lawrence mentioned George Yankovic. This is a real pioneer in Bulgarian art. He's one of the very first abstract painters, and he was a geometric abstract painter who now is highly collected. In his lifetime, he actually received the Jackson Pollock Lee Krasner Foundation grant. And sadly enough, 3 months before he should have arrived to the States, he passed in 1998. So I really did not understand much about his art at the time. The the title of this web page, which is a Facebook page, is the Visions from the Crypt, and it's a little bit of a a joke because it's vaguely related to a TV show that I got familiar when I came here. The Tales from the Crypt, which is like a goofy kind of uh, horror show, but the relevance is that growing up in Bulgaria, probably similar to other countries behind the Iron Curtain in the 70s and 80s, it was art-wise and otherwise, it was really a crypt. It was an insula. It was a very small, within itself circle of professional artists. What was happening at the time is, unless you graduate the National Academy of Fine Arts, you cannot be a freelancing artist. People who are graduates became like the members of the union of the artists, and that was a very selected group of people. The competition to get into the academy was extremely brutal. I know people who have applied for many years, like 5, 6, 7 years. I even didn't dare. So the way I kind of got in touch with George was like he was giving this life model drawing classes, and that's how I got to know him. And this work, this one in particular, which is like the beach, I grew on the Black Sea coast, may have this kind of a geometric, angular kind of deviation from the very conventional figurative representational painting that was the socialist realism of the 70s and 80s in Bulgaria and other countries. Lawrence, we can probably move on in terms of the pictures. Similar, so this work was created in Bulgaria, all of them. I actually managed to bring some of them here. Some of them were one of my first New York shows. I think this painting was one of those. I do have some of them still with me in storage. And what can I tell you? When Lawrence first saw them, he said, well, I liked it, but I got scared. And I can tell why. But there was, I think, a lot of this sense of like a fence horizon. You can always look at the horizon, you can never go beyond it. That was pretty much the feeling growing up in that atmosphere at the time. There was one painting I wanted to mention that maybe if we can, there's a similar series of, and forgive me, they're heavily symbolic, and I actually have forgotten what some of the symbols are already. I think the overall is just this fragmented way of life where it was a very interesting combination of like predictability, because everything seems to be laid off for you like until the rest of your life, with the government taking over pretty much every aspect of life, but also uncertainty. And that uncertainty was mainly driven by the fear that they may come and ask you certain questions. The painting that I actually have in mind is further down. It's if we this one heavily influenced by surrealism, of course. It's kind of Max Ernst and Tanguy, and which is to say, it's not that we didn't have information about what's happening in the art world. I think the sense of like futility came from the fact that you are actually never able to be in something like what we're having right now. Outside of this close circle of like professional artists, there was really no dialogue with the outside world in terms of artists or curators or audience or anything like it. Everything happened in this enclosed atmosphere. So a lot of it was kind of just copying what you can see from art books, which we had. But there was really no dialogue in terms of what these images or what these movements represented for the artists who created them. Maybe move down further. Similarly, that's actually one painting that is left home. It's within family. It's called The Bow Game. And again, I think it was this kind of a feeling of everything is predictable, but you really cannot tell if everything is as safe as you can imagine. So this constant movement of uncertainty and anxiety. I was also, as you can tell, probably a big fan of Dali at the time and the surrealism. So this is a very small painting that is on a palette, like one of the plastic palettes that we use to mix, colors and things like it. And it's a two-sided painting. It was presented in a happening that actually happened after the revolution in Bulgaria, happened in 1994. It was broadcasted with a national students program at the time. And I remember the painting was dipped in a fish aquarium full of water halfway through it. And it kind of created this weird surrealistic reflection of the painting if you look at it in a certain way. So luckily it survived. I actually still have it. My daughter was able to dig it out. And the second part of it is further down. If you, it's not this part. This is another canvas that is similar to the, to the beach and that angular geometric deconstruction of the figurative. It might be the next one. Oh, we have the other kind of. This is an actual landscape or cityscape rather from one of the streets in the city where I lived at the time. I vividly remember this summer storm that came, and these are the very famous seagulls that in Bulgarian called glarusi. So the birds, they're rather big, and the birds kind of just shine when the sun hits it in a certain way, and the clouds were in the background. So that's by memory, but that's probably as accurate as it comes. More surrealistic, this kind of a fantasy landscape, I think, with some mutating animals. I remember that I got very harsh critic about this painting because it was not realistic. It was too childish. I remember some of the local artists were like, "What is that? Like a child drew this?" It was really a requirement that you must be proficient in drawing and in painting realistically, to be considered an artist. So that's the other side of the painting the small painting that I was referring to. So yeah, it was one side was horizontally oriented, the other one was vertical, and it ended up in the fish tank. And now it's here, and you can clearly see the surrealistic Dali kind of inspired imagery. I also should say that my first hero was 19th century Russian marine painter Ivazovsky. So I grew up on the seacoast, and I was very much interested in painting the sea and the reflection of the light and things like it. This particular one is actually the very first painting I did. It's on a piece of paper, actually. And these are my exercises in learning how to draw human heads. So
I have to stop you there because this blows my mind. This was your first painting and it was just an exercise in how to draw?
Yeah. I had a lot of art books, so I copied. I mean, I know where these things are. So, for instance, the face in the African American person is Rubens' drawing, next to it is a Russian artist. And you can see a Picasso down there. There is a Monet with the person with the tall hat. There is a Dostoevsky's portrait right over here. These are very small. The painting is like probably 6x8 or 6x10. So they're small. They were initially done by a pencil, and then I kind of slowly start painting over it.
This one.
These are the visions from the crypt. This is the kind of the angst around, I guess the happy face of a clown of a sort that we used to put on the regime and the life under socialism, and the things that went underneath, which were, rather destructive. It's an exaggeration. Just to be clear, no hero in any way. I didn't grow up in time when there's like mass killing or anything like this. These times were like before I was born. What was the scary part is like, you're really not supposed to talk about other aspects of the world in general, other than what's happening in Bulgaria and possibly in the USSR. People who used to visit somehow, go to Western Europe, when you come back, they're informants all the time. If you start sharing some positive impressions, you might be asked to answer to, what are you doing? Are you, is that a propaganda for the West? That was the reality of it. More of intimidation, not necessarily brutal oppression and murder, but like psychological. This is the painting that I was mentioning to Lawrence initially. So this is kind of the symbolic, and it has political connotations in it, because the face of this little king is kind of vaguely taken from the portrait of the premier, party leader that we had for 45 years. It's not a direct copy for a very good reason, because you're not supposed to do those kind of things. So very much inspired by what I studied in terms of Renaissance painting. I remember that when I was thinking of the crown, I was looking at many of the Rembrandt paintings with, the light and the shadows and all this kind of thing. But people got it, although nobody ever asked me, oh, is that the guy? They usually say, that kind of reminds me of somebody. It's like, is it possible that might be? Like, yeah, it's possible, and we move on. So you don't do this kind of direct critiques or whatever you may say about the regime, but artists were trying one way or another. So my roommate at the time kind of took the painting into his. And that's now 32 years forward. Lawrence selected paintings that are in my current show at Alpha Gallery. Alpha is a gallery at Alpha Gallery is at New Brunswick. The show opened like about 2 weeks ago, and this is from a series that's called The Trying Year Departures. So clearly related to another trying period of our lives, but I would imagine you can easily see in a very different kind of format. Lawrence, do you want me to continue to talk about those things, or you may want to?
I guess we can because it's not as interesting as being brutalized or having your immediate ancestors brutalized, but we don't have to talk about that.
Could you say what the in this one?
So that these paintings were created, all the abstract work that I've done for the last couple of years, they started shortly before the pandemic. And the one that you just saw, kind of large canvases, linen on, it's unprimed. And the inspiration came from two life experiences. One was visiting a show at Denis Diderot by an artist whose name is Joseph Stefanelli, and maybe some of you know who he is. in my view, an amazing artist. It was really kind of an eye-opening experience being to that show. All these colors come from him. And later on, seeing the last Julian Schnabel show at the Pace, and speaking of the canvases in the material, what I learned about the Schnabel show is that he took canvases from the open markets in Mexico, and these canvases were used to kind of provide shades for the market, and they were beaten by the wind and baked by the wind, washed by the rain, and maybe lying in dirt for about a year. So he took that canvases that have a very organic, this kind of a very raw feel in it, totally unprepared, unprimed, and he painted on it. And I was like, damn it, that's an excellent idea. That's kind of what I want to have. So I figure out how, is there any way without wasting a year and going to Mexico to, bake canvases in the sun, what can you do about it? What I figured out is I keep my brushes in, these jars, and I'm too lazy to wash them. So they collect the water there, collects like a lot of sediment and all kind of stuff in it. And I figured out that if I have a basin, like a washing basin, and squish the canvas in it and pour that water, the sediments and the colors would just kind of take some shape. And actually that's what happened. So these unprimed canvases where my wastewater from my brushes dried out, created this natural shapes, and I just started painted over them. And that's what created this latest series. And here we're jumping to something that's, I've been doing this for like close to 15 years. I do sketchbooks. I do them rather regularly. This is one from maybe close to 10 years back. Actually, the title of the drawing is in the picture. It's called Walt Whitman in Tübingen. This is the Tübingen University kind of photograph. And this is kind of going back to my roots of trying to prove to myself, I guess, that I can draw, because that was the pressure in the environment that I grew up when I was aspiring to be an artist in Bulgaria. It was the same for any kind of, if you don't have the craft of like being a good drawer, you're really not qualified. This is a series that's called The Genetic Garden. So my scientific background slips into it. And actually a fellow artist, Heidi Hardy, presented series of artist books in few exhibitions, and maybe 5 years ago. I still do the sketchbooks, and I know from those that these are not very easy to sell. Regardless, I think all artists do this all the time. This is my latest one. I'm not sure if you can see it. I got it in Austin, and this is from the Mexican Art Museum in Austin. And what draws me to those is like most of them are handmade paper. I really, I'm not a big fan of like a painting that is finished and flat and furnished and kind of glossy. I would like things to have texture, and the handmade paper kind of offers that additional texture component. Also, they have. Go ahead.
Is this these DNA strings?
These are the different DNA acids that's how you kind of write a formula in chemistry about DNA, and I kind of use them to create this kind of a net. So that's why it's called the genetic garden. Yeah. You may recognize some of these faces. That's another sketchbook. These are some royalty faces, and these are the Four Seasons. This is a fantasy kind of. But in terms of my method, I often copy portraits from like other artists, like from art books. That's how I learned to draw, frankly. Like looking at it and drawing. These are so. This is one of the more recent where I kind of a little bit moved away from directly figurative. This is the Raven inspired, the post poem drawing from a very special sketchbook that has to do a lot with. For a while, I actually worked at the VA, and I was dealing with helping veterans to recover from, most recent wars. You hear kind of heartbreaking stories of like abuse and, maltreatment and things like it. So I did a whole series of this, what I call them landscape portraits. The idea is that it's a face as big as a mountain. You can see some of the clouds behind it that symbolize some of the anguish and the pain. Not a very happy sketchbook, but still. And speaking of using, auto art as inspiration, I had this series of what's called the Mates. This is a series that developed for about close to 10 years, from about 2008, 9, 2016. And these are all taken images from like either classical or more contemporary paintings of female, either nudes or female figures. For instance, this one is a Titian painting. It's called a painting of a young woman. The previous one was a Dutch, and this is Venus from Velasquez, I believe. So these are reinterpretations of these classical paintings when I was still playing with this intersect between figurative and more loose, more abstract, which eventually kind of pushed me into the fully abstract. That's one of these attempts to kind of use the classical structure and composition by, using this letter. It's called the painting job. It's 3 paintings that have this letter as the center, and then I let some of the paint just float around to drip around, similar to what happens when you try to paint your room and you do a bad job, which is usually what I do with painting my room. One of the artists that I didn't know, but I learned about when I came here was Romar Bierden, and his series, The Block, that was at the Met for many years, although they took it out now, really blew me away. And so I have a series that's called The Block. And it was inspired by the experience of taking the shuttle from Mount Sinai, where I worked, to the VA hospital and going through like Harlem, before what Harlem is now, like maybe around 2000. There are blocks and blocks of like this empty houses. And so this one and the next one is from the Block series that was kind of a reminiscence of, if you remember Bierden's The Block, this is this lively 6-piece panel of collage of people in the street, dancing, music, sound, noise, whatever it might be. And in the 2000s, Harlem didn't look like that. Now, I've been around for a long time to know that now Harlem looks rather differently. My studio is up there on 147th Street. Lauren's been there. I'm happy to have anybody who wants to come and visit. And this is an extraordinary area now where there's a lot of artists. Historically, there have been a lot of artists. There are galleries popping up. But that's kind of in a nutshell some of the journey that I have had in the last 27 years.
Fabulous. And I am going to put up those links so people can copy them if they'd like to. So I'm putting that in the chat for you. There we go. Thank you, Iliyan.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity again.
Gotcha.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Really, round of applause. Absolutely. Anybody have any questions for Iliyan right now?
I have a question. Hi, Iliyan.
Hey,
Okay, I had the honor of photographing some of the abstract pieces.
hey, Andrew, how are you?
Oh, good. How are you? This is wonderful. It's so nice to hear what was in your mind and throughout so many years. just wonderful. So
Thanks.
my question is, since I spend quite a bit of time with your large scale pieces, I'm very drawn to the panorama. So I noticed that when I was photographing them, a couple in particular, they were like 3 meters or 8 feet wide. What maybe prompted you to work in such a large scale, because it has such an effect on the final product?
Right. It's hard to tell if there was like a one particular moment. It seems like it was more of organic development in terms of this particular series, but I have always, these are not the largest pieces that I've done. Actually, I have a row of, I think it's about 50 meters long, like an endless drawing. My guess is, well, jokingly saying maybe narcissism. I think all artists kind of want to have some taste of what it's like to take on a large canvas. So my comparison is when I was learning to draw, these are like small pieces of paper. I'm looking at the book, you seem to have like control over all this. I think it's a different level of excitement and creative thinking when you look into something which is that you cannot just embrace, you cannot just put your hands on it. It might be just the kind of the physical manifestation of a mind expansion, but I think that's what happened with my work in the last couple of years, especially around the pandemic, some of the events just before it, and then the personal experience through it. It kind of drew me to like, I want to say something, like express an emotion, and seems like the smaller canvases were not big enough anymore.
Oh, that's great. It's nice to hear your feedback on that. I'm sure I have more questions, but feel free, anyone else.
And thanks for joining.
Oh, no problem.
Andrew did a wonderful work, actually. We're doing a catalog right now of the photographs that he did.
Thank you. You made it inspiring. I will say that.
Thanks.
Okay, O'Neill is going to take over the control here and talk about large format. Where do you see this?
All right, can you see everything?
Yeah.
How does it look?
Can I stop you here just because I got to talk about this? Because I think I might be wrong about this, and Iliyan would perhaps remember that I saw this. Well, I saw it actually on screen first, but I saw this when it was in the show, and it is this piece that is the reason you're here. Not to say that the other pieces are not worthy, but this is. I told you then, I think, and I still believe it, that this should be all over the place. This should be a postage stamp. It just so takes my breath away. And why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, this piece was interestingly enough created back in 2015. So if you think about it, that's way before the pandemic, before I guess the main Black Lives Matter movement and some of those things that were going on in the country. This was actually probably my first piece when I became pretty serious about creating a body of work and starting to become an artist. The piece is titled Citizen, which has multiple meanings around it. One of it is basically I was born in Jamaica, and I had an interesting road to become a citizen in the US. But on the flip side of that, I think you're thinking about becoming a citizen in a country where there are a lot of battles that you have to face. Even though that it's probably better than where you came from. It's there's going to be an uphill battle when you become a citizen when you're a Black male in the United States, right? So this is depicting. It doesn't really matter how I dress. I could be wearing a suit. I'm looked at a certain way. There are views upon me just being a Black male in this country. And I think, you know, with the scarf around my face at the time, this kind of, you know, depicted, I guess, my voice being a little bit not really heard and not really being able to kind of show who I was as a person within that time. So it was, you know, a very, I guess, important piece for me. Not that it just propelled my career, but it also, it was also probably the biggest self-portrait that I think I could have shown at the time. I hope that answers your question, Lawrence.
Yes, so absolutely. You know, I know you changed the sequence, so I'm not. Do the next one.
Okay, and so just to give you a sense of scale, and a lot of these paintings, you're going to probably see a sense of scale with them, just because the impact that it has and what it brings to the viewer. You kind of get enveloped in larger paintings, and you know, you're able to experience them a little bit better, I think. That not saying that the, you know, the smaller ones are not great, but I think when you can up the scale and really provide an impact, it definitely helps. So this is the painting to scale. This is citizen to scale. And in a lot of these, you'll see me within the frame just to show that that reference. So this is another painting that I did around the same time. I think it's 2015, 2016. And this depicts a young boy in Rwanda that actually is part of this program called Shooting Touch, where they are providing sneakers, clothing, and they're kind of helping them fight malaria throughout, you know, through basketball, which is very interesting. This painting was actually auctioned off to benefit that, but I always show this painting because it's probably one of the most meaningful and impactful paintings to me. Not just because of the technique and me growing as a painter, but I think because it was able to provide healthcare for a ton of kids over there in Rwanda. And to this day, I still think it's one of my most technical, or one of my best technical paintings. You can't really see it in this, but I think, you know, if you get a quick zoom in, you can kind of see the texture. You can kind of see how the paint is layered in. The background is very textured as well, but it's kind of blurred out with the photograph. But it's a very thick, textured, probably old master style painting. Most of these are in chronological order, so you can kind of see my growth throughout, I guess, the past 8 years of painting, 7 to 8 years of painting. This other one was created around the Black Lives Matter movement at the time. This was a painting of Colin Kaepernick. It's a very textured, very large scale painting that I did that was a part of a show in Provincetown. At the time, I feel like there were a lot of, you know, folks that were trying to be activists and trying to help for the cause, and he was actually ridiculed. And you know, even though he was a great athlete, he still he was never able to play again because of standing up for what he believed in, which is very powerful. I know, you know, it was one of those paintings that kind of grabbed a lot of people during the show, which was great to me. And it's one that I'll always look back on and be proud of because of what was going on at the time in the country. And this is the painting to scale, working on it. texture. Um, it's here with like a very this was one of the paintings, and this is a self-portrait, but this is another one of the paintings that was in my second solo show in Cape Cod, and this is called Only Human. Within this painting, you're actually seeing me, you know, trying to depict that, and this goes back to the Black Lives Matter movement and what was going on at the time. But this is me depicting kind of how I feel, love for a specific country, a specific area, but also understanding, you know, everything that comes along with that, right? And trying to let everyone know that I am only human, and it probably goes beyond me, but we are only human as blacks and black males in this country, and that's all we can do is kind of go through life that way. And you know, I feel like sometimes we don't get seen as that, and it's been very difficult. So it's one of those paintings that also touched me as well, and I think a very powerful show. The title of the show was American Emotion, so there were a lot of paintings around this subject matter within the painting, depicting kind of Blacks and African Americans when it came to what was going on in the country at the time.
You know, last week or the week before ATOA here, we had a self-portrait show, 3 artists showing their work in a self-portrait show. Something that I think is very important to say is that you are, to some degree, a self-portraitist, and obviously you do other things as well. But
yeah. I mean, I've done some self-portraits. I don't think it's on the level of Rembrandt, but it's you know, it's there. I have a few self-portraits that I have done, and I think you're pulling your experience directly into that, but it's hard because those things are so literal, right? I think almost pretty much every painting is kind of like a self-portrait of the artist, but when you're actually having to go in and paint yourself and depict the emotion that you feel inside, it's very literal, and then something that you have to really understand who you are to pull that out, right? And honestly, the self-portraits are probably the hardest one to do. So this next painting was also in that show, American Emotion. This painting is called Praying This Works, and it's obviously there's a sense of humor within this because of what was going on at the time within the Black Lives Matter movement and black males getting murdered, and it was almost comical to us, kind of like what was happening within the country. There was nothing you really could do about it, so it has that undertone of disbelief, like this can't be real life type of thing. And then it also kind of, you know, sets the tone for him basically praying and trying to understand, like, what can we do to actually get past that, right? To get past what's going on, because I think a lot of folks at the time were at a loss. And so this is also a very large scale painting. And this is the model for the painting as well, who was my roommate in college. And I think, you know, being able to pull him and understand, you know, his mindset and his thought around what was going on was very interesting as well. And I was glad that he was actually willing to pose for a painting like this, knowing that it's one of those paintings that I think is going to spark a conversation for folks that goes beyond art. I think you know, anyone could come up and probably want to talk and probably understand, you know, what the meaning of this painting is. And hopefully it will, like, you know, bring awareness towards some of these issues. Okay. This is another painting I did that was also in that show, Toxic Environment. This painting is basically kind of centered around, or this painting was basically centered around the women's rights and that march, as well as what was happening within the government at the time. This is a female, she's actually sitting on the president's desk, you know, wearing a gas mask as well as holding a teddy bear. I don't want to go into too much detail within it, but I know a lot of you probably have your own thoughts around it, which is great. And I think that's what I wanted to depict with this one. Another painting in that same show, Only Skin, which to me depicts the slight moment of when someone notices that you're an African American, and you know, how they see you and how they portray that. This is a larger scale painting, but within the painting, it's technically only skin, only face. It's very detailed. It's very, you know, I guess large and like really pulls you in. It's one of those paintings I think you kind of have to see in person. I don't know if this does it justice, but it does lean along the lines of what we were talking about earlier, and it was in that American Emotion show. Another painting within that show, it's called Disbelief, and it's the personification of justice. In this case, African American justice, just in disbelief of what was going on at the time. And this is another large scale painting. I think both of these, well, this painting is definitely on public view in Pittsburgh, but there are you know, a number of paintings in here that are on public view. So this one wasn't necessarily in the show, but was painted probably along the same lines of what we were talking about before. This is called We Are the Roses, and I think it's a little bit more of an uplifting painting, remembering the ancestors and the folks that paved the way before you. Within this painting, you're going to see portraits of African Americans that have made great sacrifices or have done things to uplift their community. At the bottom, you're going to see rose petals on the concrete, and that's basically saying the folks behind you are the roses. I'll kind of let this one be open to interpretation as well, just because I think there's a lot of layers, and you know, it might take a while to dissect each one of those layers, from what the kid in the painting is wearing to you know, each individual behind him, and to even the color scheme of the painting, right? And this is one of those pieces, kind of close up, John Lewis. And then this is the scale. This is just to give you a sense of scale when I was working on the painting. Hopefully that helped.
Yes, it does.
Next, I kind of want to move on to some paintings that I did around being a little bit more inclusive. Just
for 1 second, just to do a time check, because I just realized we're
yeah, go for it.
But just I'm loving it. So
Okay, where are we at? How much time do I have?
forget about it. Just keep.
Okay. All right, so this, and I'll probably go a little bit faster for you guys. This is a painting that's called The Line, which brought forth this thought of being a little bit more inclusive and how thin the line is between love and hate. a part of that was this painting, which was also shown in New York for Show Your World, and I think you saw this one, Lawrence. This was Speak Volumes, and it's basically around the women's rights movement. It's a very large scale painting, and it depicts, you know, someone kind of feeling like they're stifled, they can't really speak their mind, they can't be the person who they want to be. Obviously, female and women's rights. This is the scale. This painting is called Free Thinker, and it was along the lines of famous Malcolm X photograph, and it goes back to women's rights and just being able to navigate your way throughout the world as a female. This one is also along those lines, and this is called Her, and basically she's pulling her hair over her mouth, similar to a mustache, very androgynous. You know, I don't know if many people would know this is a female. This is her next to the painting, so you could kind of get a sense of who she is and why the painting was painted, why she was chosen for the painting. I'm kind of just gonna breeze through some of these. This is another one pulled in for being more inclusive. I think a lot of the portraits that we see and depict in museums and things like that don't necessarily show everyone in every race. This painting was around me studying like the Muslim culture. This is my best friend's mother, so she was similar to my mother growing up. And I think this painting is in a museum in Texas right now. This is a little bit of detail around it. This painting was created to when we were coming out of the pandemic, and it's called Out of the Darkness. And it was more of an uplifting painting, and I wanted to do something that didn't really depict the pandemic, because I know a lot of artists were doing paintings that did depict the pandemic, but more of manifesting a change and moving out of what we were doing at the time. This is some detail around that painting. It's very chiaroscuro, you know, Baroque type painting. Moving forward to my last solo show. This is Human Nature. These are some of the paintings within Human Nature. I'm going to go through a few of them just so that you guys can get a sense of each one. This is one of the large scale ones that you saw in the previous slide. This is called Protect Our Protector. And this is basically around us losing our Black fathers as he's holding his daughter up, going through the wilderness. It's extremely hard when you see Black men being taken away from their families, and they're the ones who are supposed to be the protectors and the providers and things like that. Again, this is my best friend and his daughter. This is a bite of the apple, you know, reference to the Magritte painting, but this is a young Black girl kind of grabbing that apple out of the air and taking a bite of it. I think you guys can draw your conclusions around this one, but it's definitely about progression and moving forward and having a seat at the table. And this is a scale reference. This is another large scale painting. I'm not going to go into too much detail around it, but it was within the same show. This is called Hunger Has a Silver Lining. And it pulls in a lot of different styles throughout art history. I think you're going to see a little bit of Sargent. You're going to see a little bit of, you know, that depicted in the tablecloths and stuff like that. I was just studying a lot of different artists. You're going to also see some Trump boy within this painting and stuff like that. So it's one of those paintings you probably need to see in person. It's very large as well. Another painting within that show is Prepare for the Journey, which is a sister painting to the next one, where this depicts a young boy basically being prepared for the journey, knowing the stuff that he has to go through. This is a detail shot of his face. And this is the sister painting to it, which is Flying Blind, which is also about progression and not knowing where you're going, but having faith and kind of working towards it. And then we move into paintings that are pretty recent, and they depict growth. So this one is probably one of my only, and I don't know if you can call it a still life, but it's similar to how I would do most of the still life. This is growth over time, and it's me kind of going back to how classical still lifes are painted, but bringing in that modern twist to it, obviously a sense of surrealism and things like that. And this is another one of those still lives. And this is Growth from Humble Beginnings, and it was part of that growth series where I had things growing out of objects that normally wouldn't contain them or hold them. And this is a simple scale. And I'm gonna skip through some of these just so that you guys can have some time. Lawrence. So this one is a painting around masking our emotions, and it's basically I basically painted this whole thing, and then I kind of trumply painted a piece of tape over her mouth, knowing that she has to sometimes put on a smile around other people, and this this goes for many of us, not being able to show her true self and who she is. And this is another piece of that. This was, I think, auctioned off by the Folk Art Museum, and then it's with one of I think one of their directors, so it's still up there. Another piece within that series. This kind of is moving more towards disruptive realism, which I'll talk a little bit more about pretty soon here. But on this one, the tape is off, and you're kind of moving into a space of being a little bit more free with your work. And this is, similar to those series and along those lines. This is part of a series called Wide Awake. This painting is a painting of my Jamaican mother who, kind of had this American dream. And at the time, I don't think it was definitely fulfilled. She's, in this painting, you'll see everyone in here with coffee cups and kind of waking up to a certain thing. So this one is basically called The American Dream. This is Self-Love, taking a sip of the coffee. And I'm gonna just kind of just give you guys a sense of what it is. Cleveland Ave, and most people don't know, but that is the bus that Rosa Parks rode on, and where she was going. So this painting is kind of depicting that. A lot of times, you kind of really have to look into it to get an understanding of what that is. And then this is Self-Worth. Obviously, on here is the Basquiat painting that kind of sold and broke all those records, Untitled one. So it's symbolic to what's going on within the painting and waking up to understanding your self-worth. And then these last few paintings are around disruptive realism and kind of playing around with abstract and modern style paintings within a very high realism technique. And you'll see that probably within a lot of my more recent works, where you're able to be a little bit more free and moving towards that. Another one. This is another one as well. And that's it. Hope I didn't rush through that too fast, Lawrence, but I know I wanted to get through it for you guys.
I just gotta read, let's see, you probably didn't read texts while you were talking, but Robin says, O'Neill, your paintings are amazing and very moving. You have an amazing gift of both skill and creativity. And the question is, do you work from live models or photographs, and how long does it take?
Yeah, so it depends on the painting. Some of those you saw, they looked like they were really large, but they were very small paintings, just packed with a lot of detail, right? And it took me a long time to be able to understand that I can scale down and really make the painting extremely powerful. So those paintings will take a little bit less time. But as you guys know, if you're painting in an old master style, there's a certain amount of drying time and layering within each one. So you're going to see an underpainting, then you're going to see an overpainting, then you're going to see layering of colors. A lot of times I layer that in with blues and reds and cools and warms, just so that I can project the depth within each one. And then you'll do your scumbles and things like that to just bring it to life a little bit more. But yeah, it does take a good amount of time. When you're doing it, it probably takes maybe 200 hours, but I'm working on multiple paintings just because there needs to be drawing time within each one.
Okay. When Andrew says, truly inspiring and captivating work. Thank you, O'Neill. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I've your
Thank you so much.
Anyone who wants to grab that, it's in the chat box. And Rick, you're sitting down. Hooray! Okay.
Oh, I'm here.
Hey! I looked over and you weren't there a minute ago, and I was like, "Where did he go?"
I got up to get some water. My throat got dry.
Okay. I'm not going to read this. I'll just say I know Rick since I'm like 5 or 10 years old, and he's. The first time I saw his artwork, I was so impressed. Not so much anymore, but you know.
It used to me.
But yes, so used to you now. But his work visualizes a space between natural images, lyrical abstraction, and pure painting. I think we can skip the rest of that. I mean, we got that. It's we're going to get that out of this. And I am just given the time. I can't believe that I like I said to you in the email I sent out or earlier. I could easily spend 2 hours with each of you on these works, but I'll let you talk now.
Oh, yeah. Well, the last two pieces you showed were actually works on paper, on mostly pencil, and they were done some years ago. That's what this was done some years ago too. It's an oil. It's called Form Farm, I think, and it's an oil on canvas, about maybe 24 by 36, and this is also an oil on canvas. It's bigger. It's like maybe 24 by 36, and I can't recall the title of it. This is another one, a work on paper, mixed media, gold paint, some sand, cardboard, and a little bit of collage in there.
Something I love about your work is how you from one piece to another, maybe one decade to another, I'm not sure, but you're working in so many different materials.
Yeah, there's a lot of different materials, but I think I've maintained a kind of a stylistic integrity so that anybody looking at the work would probably know it's mine, even if the material is different. So these oils were all done pretty much as a series. This is another one of those. This is another oil on canvas, so maybe 24, 30 by 40 or so. This is a very early work. It was on paper, mostly pencil, some paint. It has a little bit of thickness, a little bit of impasto as well. And actually, it's been in a drawer for about 40 years. But
Wow.
This is a smaller piece on masonite, pencil and paint and watercolor. This is a pretty small piece, it's maybe 4x5. It's on board, it's acrylic painting, and it was I was doing a series of different towns in Connecticut. And this was, I'm not sure which town this was, but it's a depiction of one of them and recently sold. This is another oil landscape done some years ago. This is also a painting that's pretty old, but it was a painting, a collage, and it's called Painted Universe. It's another landscape done around the time of the landscapes that we saw a few minutes ago. This is a piece that's pasted on, actually it's a window frame, and the painting kind of mirrors the frame of the window and kind of maybe depicts snow, the winter scene at your window. It's another one done at the same time. It's an oil. This is okay, you're going pretty fast. This is another small one, acrylic pencil.
You have a lot of pictures, so I gotta go fast.
Yeah, keep going. It's kind of like a hurricane drawing pencil. Another pencil. This is a larger piece. It's, I think, 50 by 64 or something like that. It's called Yellowstone. It was part of a series I called the U-Haul series because when I brought it out to a gallery, I had to rent a U-Haul. So it seemed the right title for it. This is another work on pencil and paper. And this is a painting called, I think it's called the Lake Luann. It's a little place around here. And actually, I think your brother owns it, Larry Lawrence.
Really?
Yeah.
He owns-
In fact, he sent me this picture of it, and you could
Oh,
probably
wait.
see it's on glass, so you can see the window and on the right-hand side reflected in the glass.
Gotcha.
That's not part of the painting. There's another kind of crazy drawing. Another graphite. This is this one's called Drizzle. It kind of should give you the feeling of a rainy day. This is on hardboard, a pencil and paper and paint, mixed media. This is called This Is Not Art. I don't know why I calls it that.
Why not?
That's it's on hardboard too. It's like 24 by 48, I think. It's another oil. And there's another oil in the same series.
We have a bunch that are very, very similar here.
Yeah, these three that you just showed were all part of one series.
This is the one I told you that I think should be the other way around.
It could be. Sometimes I do turn them around. This one, I don't think you could do that with.
No, it would drip.
Yeah, it's called four cornered. Yeah, this is another one, another work on paper. I think you had that one shown already.
Really?
Yeah, that's Drizzle.
Oh, okay.
This is actually a detail. I don't know how I got it in there of a section of a painting with a piece of wood
Yeah, as a photographer, I found that there often are times that, the camera will just fire the shutter or,
Yeah, this one is
Very-
called Overwing Texas. It's another one of the U-Haul series.
and it's all too often, it's embarrassing that, those accidental exposures sometimes are my favorite shots on the roll.
Well, sometimes accidents are the best thing. This is a more recent one, a rework of an older painting, as this is. I think I got that one too.
You didn't give this to me. This was.
What's that? This is the done with an Apple pencil over a photograph, actually.
Yes. So this was like a signature kind of thing, right? And I just couldn't resist. I had to do it. I just had to do it.
Yeah, I thought I'd just throw that in. Because actually what I've been doing a lot of work with the computer and working over photographs lately. It's
Mhm.
actually what I've been doing the last few years during the pandemic.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we have here, and something that I put you into whatchamacallit, yeah, let's see, to the chat box. Contact there. It was on the bottom. There is his contact info,
Mm-hmm.
and we have gone quite late. So I'm going to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Kristen. Kristen, what'd you think? What'd you think? Did I do okay for you?
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. It was so nice to see all those works, and especially I love seeing drawings from painters like you presented today. That's yeah, I don't really have that much to add, I guess, unless we want to open the floor again to questions from
Yes,
the audience.
let's
I
do
know
that.
we answered all of them that came in as they were speaking, but if anyone else wanted to ask any more questions,
Yeah,
that would be
anything in the chat box that I should be reviewing? I'll do that.
yeah.
Who's got a question? Question.
You got to all the ones in the chat. I just wanted to
Okay.
open the opportunity up again for anyone to ask any questions here. Or if you have any
Yeah.
last
Nobody
words.
likes me. Sorry, I love you though. I want to thank the three artists here. I'm so glad you was able to all hang out together. You going through this work and putting this together so inspired me all this week. I really was incredibly uplifting for me to be able to do this, and I'm sort of speechless on two counts. One is because I'm usually not speechless, and the other is that I would love to just stay here and talk about this stuff for the next couple of hours or more. I'm not going to ask you to do that, but I all three of you really have so much enriched me. And I want to give credit to somebody who couldn't make it, who wound up working tonight, who was Natalie Berletskaya, who is the person that sort of brought the two of us together, O'Neill and Iliyan. She was I met her first as a student, and in a sense, I became her student as a result of her taking my class, which is always the case. I mean, one of the things I love about teaching is that it's the easiest way to learn. Because she was the one who made it, who had me doing the jurying or curating of the photography shows she was putting together, which I'd done a million times before I met her. But then when it came to doing painting, other in three-dimensional works. I was like, no, that's not my area. I can't do that. She said, oh, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And she's the one that pushed me, and that's how I got to meet O'Neill and Iliyan. I suspect. Do you recall? Were you at the same show? Is that where I met you both? Because there were several of those Show Your World shows. I just want to, yeah, I just have to give acknowledgement to those folks and let you know that you've given me so much. You guys, Rick, especially you. I mean, because I've been influenced by your work for 6 decades.
You know, maybe 60 years.
Okay, not 6 decades. Okay.
Maybe something,
Everyone-
long time.
Indeed. And so good to see you, Larissa. I'm guessing there are no more questions. So,
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, I'll just-
Lawrence.
Feel
I'll
free to
wrap
close
it up
out.
then. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Lawrence, for organizing this and for moderating the discussion. And also thanks to Doug, our chairman and CEO, the A2A programming committee, and our board, our interns. Anyone new in the audience tonight, if you want to be in the know about our upcoming programs and news at Artists Talk on Art, you can go to our website and subscribe to the newsletter, atoanyc.org. I'll add that to the chat. On the homepage there, you'll see a button that says subscribe, so you can enter your email information and yeah, stay in touch with us. We're also on Instagram. Typing in it again, Artists Talk on Art on Instagram. And yeah, our next panel is going to be on October 17th. Again, that's on encaustic artists. So we hope to see you all there. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.